forward, follow me. If I hesitate, push me. If I may kill me, avenge me. If I am a traitor, kill me.
Gangsters, cops, and politicians, get ready to rock. We're on a mission. Each one of us shares our own vision. When I was on the yard, I went real hard. While I patrolled the streets, all the G's on me. When I was on the yard, I went real hard. While I patrolled the streets, all the G's on me.
Saludos, it's your host, Gabe Morales. We've been covering Nuestra Familia members over the past 6 decades or so. We'll resume with the H last names. There was Daniel Lizard, aka Acheli, codenames Gargoyle, and Rachel Hernandez Vargas. Lizard Hernandez stood almost 6 feet tall and looked like the stereotype of a convict with a massive build, working out on prison weight piles. And his body was adorned with numerous black bluish ink done penitentiary style. While he was born in Pittsburgh in the Bay Area, he moved when he was very young with his parents down to Long Beach, and I understand was raised like a surfer dude. Actually had it pretty good. But then he started getting in trouble in school, so his parents sent him to live with his tia back in Pittsburgh, where he started running the streets and was very much feared. I show he was Northern Structure in the mid-1980s under D number 31247 and was actually introduced to the Northern Structure by his cousin who was from Pittsburgh at San Quentin. I show that he paroled on that D number but then got popped with the firearms in 1994, whereby he was given J number 26454. And I understand stabbed a Sureño by the name of Rudy Castillo in the neck and nearly killed him at San Quentin. He was known for being a savage with a knife and would often attack Sureños. He was validated as being NS by 1995. While he was housed at Pelican Bay, Lizard saw a lot of infighting among NF brass, even though this was supposedly not allowed by the Constitution. Lizard used these divisions to his advantage when he later misled and played off lower-ranking insoles against each other out on the streets. Lizard was very violent, manipulative, and a slippery gangster, in my opinion. Reptilian, like his moniker. But I know some cops and gangsters who admired him. Now, here's the thing. I understand he was celled next door to Acuete Rubalcaba in 1999, but was only considered to be a lieutenant at that time. It is my understanding that the NF via Acuete created a new semi-overall governing body rule for Hernandez as a street administrator once he was released, but this was soon questioned and revoked, but not before it was almost too late. I'm not sure how he was promoted so fast, but evidently Acuete gave him the blessings to take over the streets when he was released. At least that's the official story. It's kind of like that Wero Grattan thing. I'm not sure how he didn't appear on the Prison Gang Task Force hierarchy roster, but was out there running everything on the streets. That don't make a lot of sense to me. But anyways, with FBI and local law enforcement assistance, he was able to convince many of the lower level Northern Structure that he was running things. And immediately began to remove or isolate individuals of power while promoting his own minions, guys that also came out of nowhere and all of a sudden became regimental commanders. As I stated, some people say that Lizard gave the orders to take out Raymond Sanchez at Cap Saloon. Of course, Lizard was allowed to do just about anything while he was an FBI informant except commit murder or conspiracy to commit murder. And that wouldn't look good for law enforcement either.
We had a good idea relatively quickly who was involved in that crime.
Salinas police were intent on bringing down the entire NF regiment, but when they followed the chain of command up to Danny Hernandez, they got a big surprise.
As part of the investigation, we became aware that there was an actual informant within the ranks of the Nuestra Familia, but at the time of the homicide, I don't believe we had information that the FBI was conducting an investigation.
Salinas police then found out that Hernandez Their top suspect in the murder conspiracy was a paid FBI informant. A year before the Cap Saloon murder, Black Widow investigators had given Hernandez a choice: either face life in prison or go undercover for the government. In court, they insisted Hernandez was not involved in the murder. The FBI says to get evidence, informants are authorized to participate in but not promote limited criminal activity.
Law enforcement has to use informants. It's something that you have to be very, very careful with. And the way that we operate is that if it's not taped, if it's not corroborated, then it's difficult to use.
He was always very shifty, very manipulative. He ended up getting popped in Washington State, not Idaho, and told law enforcement that he was Mexican Mafia. I had to ask him again, are you sure he didn't say Nuestra Familia or mobbed up? They said no, he said he was Mexican Mafia. I know other gang experts that have been with the California Gang Task Force that said after his talks to law enforcement, he told them that he was first Mexican Mafia and was put on by Joe Morgan. So either this guy's a liar or he was losing it towards the end. Personally, I've never been impressed with him, other than he was a good talker and very aggressive and a good fighter for all accounts. Love him or mistrust him, Daniel Lizard Hernandez did a lot of damage to the NF during Operation Black Widow. In all, at least 21 people were indicted on the FBI's approximate 3-year investigation. And when it included in April 2001, after a nearly $5 million investment, it was forever known as one of the largest takedowns on a prison gang in U.S. history. Speaking of prison gangs, I have another book that covers all major U.S. prison gangs in the United States. So if you want to know more than just California prison gangs, you might want to check that one out. There was Anthony Weasel Herrera from San Jose. I'm not sure what his CDC number was, but I showed that in 1990, he was documented as being on a no good NF list. And I showed that he was hit on July 4th, 1990 by Lencho Guzman and Sleepy Esquivel. My understanding is that he was seriously wounded, but they did not take him out that time. However, this was completed in 1991 by Skip Villanueva and his tight homeboy Pony Mares in 1991. And that case was mentioned in the early 1990s RICO case. There was Jesse Magoo Herrera from Salas. I show that he was involved in a robbery in 1991, whereby he was given H number 12138. I then believe he was let out, but committed subsequent robberies as well as was involved in drug deals. So was in and out of jail and prison throughout the 1990s and early 2000s. I then showed that he was convicted of a burglary in 2003, whereby he was given T number, as in Thomas, 93196. Understand that he paroled by 2011, and I show may have been deceased by summer of the year 2012. There was John Conejo Herrera from Salas, who I show was part of the Copas Gallegos car. I showed that he was Northern Structure in the late 1980s, was convicted in the 1990s, and was given one of the first H numbers, 957. And was housed in Pelican Bay, I believe Deep Facility 7 in 1999. I showed that he was validated as being NS by the year 2000. He paroled in the year 2002 and I believe was off that H number by 2003. He may have turned Northern Rider. I'm not sure. There was Jose Felipe Prophet Herrera out of San Juan. He was an NF member in the mid-1970s under B number 40595. Now, I always thought that he became a hermit in the later part of the 70s, but I show CDC validated him as NF in 1982. But once again, that validation system is not perfect. I think what happened was there's a lot of guys, and I believe that this is the case of Prophet, who were in the Babo Sosa car. So they were no longer considered good by the majority NF, who had impeached Babo and Death Row Joe. But their faction tried to retain on to power into the early 80s, even after the 1980 RICO case came down, but eventually lost that battle. And only a few of them were allowed to come over to the Black Bob, Brown Bob side. I showed that Prophet was at Soledad in 2012, and I lost track of him after that. I showed there was an Anthony Weasel Herrera Lugo out of San Jose, who was an NF member in the early 1980s, under B number 95665. But I showed it was on the NF hit list by 1991, and I believe paroled by the year 2010, when I lost track of him. There is Henry Mad Dog Hikalea out of Santa Rosa. I show that he was arrested in 2008 by Santa Rosa PD and was eventually sent to CDC under G number 37708. He is one of the guys who I believe wanted to become NF but was denied. And so I have documentation with New Flowers, which is a dropout prison gang covered in a video that I did previously. I showed that he was at Salinas Valley State Prison in 2012. I showed that he got released, but then came back on B number, as in Bravo, T as in Thomas, 4212. And I show is currently housed in Mule Creek State Prison, which is known as a dropout facility. I show he is scheduled for release in March 2023. There was a Glenn Hobo Holden, who was a very early NF member under the Babo Sosa regime. I show that Hobo was incarcerated in the early 1970s under B number 28949. I show that he was involved in a homicide at DVI in December 1972. He remained active in the NF throughout the 1970s, and I believe was validated as such in 1979, which was about the time I understand he was saddled up with and sponsored Tibbs Morado into the NF. Once Bobo fell from power, I understand Hobo actually joined the Black Bob faction. He was somewhat of a hothead, but the new NF Mesa believed they could bring him under control. I show he was housed at Solano in 1996 and at Avenal in 2012. I believe he was out of prison by early 2018 and became involved with an anti-gang program called United Players. And last I show was alive and still rebellious as ever in the San Francisco area. There was Rodney Indio Hollingsworth from San Jose. I understand that he was housed in the California Youth Authority at Preston and stabbed one of the wards there. Per former NF member Sundown, Hollingsworth was murdered by the Weight Pile because he had been associated with the MA and had stopped his girlfriend from bringing in dope for the NF. And I believe he knew he was in bad standings because I understand that he was allowed to get married and have a boneyard visit, which is a conjugal visit at DVI, just before he's murdered. I understand he was chased all over the prison yard at DVI and that he was murdered by Eddie Boy Ortega in Bozo. There is Isidro Chilo, a.k.a. Pelon Huerta, who was out of Salinas East Market area. I understand he was in the Matt Rocha Copas Gallegos car in the late 90s, and that Carlos Terrazas was actually his primo. I show he was affiliated with the Northern Structure in the 1990s after he was popped on a dope case in 1991 and given E number 97199. He paroled in 1992, but got returned on a dope case in 1995 and was in and out of the system throughout the 1990s. I understand one day that Copas Gallegos put Pelon out on a mission and provided him with a gun, whereby he shot Cesar Lobo Ramirez, who was in a rival NF faction in Salinas that had gone after Copas Gallegos. Understand after Pelon completed the mission, he jumped a fence behind Lobo's apartment and fled in a getaway car his faction had left for him. He too had been injured while wrestling with Lobo in front of his apartment complex. Understand that Pelon then drove to Lisa Rocha's house, Matt's sister, and tried to reach his boss and channel Copas Gallegos. You see, as I stated previously, Lobo and Rico Smiley Garcia were involved in the hit on Mikhail MC Castillo, and Copas viewed this assassination as an act of betrayal and treason. Copas told Pelon that he had done good and stated that he was now a carnal, at least in Copas's faction. Isidro Pelon Huerta was mentioned in Operation Black Widow, but I understand testified, and I understand was housed at Corkland Shoe in 2002. I show that he was on the NF hit list by 2009 as Rico Smiley Garcia's faction won out over the Copas Gallegos faction, and that Pelon was out of custody by the year 2012, and I show is currently not in custody. Like I've stated previously, I usually don't discuss females in my prison gang series, but I did it earlier with Peggy Espino, and there was another female associated with the NF that probably needs mentioning, and that was Carol Old Girl Huerta from Castroville, who was a runner for Pinky Hernandez, who was discussed in the previous video. Carol, who I believe was born in 1976, was involved with the NF by the mid-1990s. I show that she was in communication with John Boxer Mendoza in the year 2000 and was the main channel for NF Communications, which is where she eventually became the girlfriend of Pinky Hernandez. And I understand was running messages for him and other NF before and after Operation Black Widow. I show that she was eventually incarcerated on BOP number 05748-748, but was released by the year 2019. There's a Javier Huerta out of Redwood City, but also had ties to San Francisco. I show he was associated with the Northern Structure in the 1980s, whereby he was popped with dope in 1988 and given a parole violation in 1989 when he was given CDC number E as in Edward 37980. Understand he paroled in 1991, but was popped on a dope case in 1993. He was convicted of a burglary in 1995, where I think he was either given a J or K number of 80953. He paroled in 1998, but got popped for dope several times and returned to custody throughout the 2000s. I show he got popped for dope in 2006 and was housed at Santa Clara County Jail when I lost track of him. There was a John Charles Hughes. I think that's his real name, but he does not show in the BOP inmate locator system. Understand that he was an NF associate at San Quentin in the 1960s, which means he would have had an A or B number. And later on, he was moved to the feds and housed at Lompoc when he was killed on November 20th, 1979 by Mexican Mafia members Ruben Snuffy Sanchez and John Lopez. There was a guy I knew at C facility in New Folsom around the year 1990 who was known as Guinais Huaracha out of San Jose, who had C number 69569. I just remember this guy being pretty husky and was a known drug dealer on the yard, but I never had no problems with him personally. Before we go, some final words today about heaven and hell. Behind various Christian ideas about heaven and hell lies a basic belief that our lives, past, present, and future, and our actions may extend beyond the grave if we believe in Jesus Christ. Some religions, like Hinduism, may view our lives on earth as sort of a living test, and we can move forward or backwards in the evolutionary chain via reincarnation, depending on what we did with our lives while we're here. In Buddhism, one may reach nirvana if one is enlightened or has the wisdom to blow out disturbing emotions, a goal of personal liberation and achieving inner peace. I'm not here to convert you one way or another. I have my own personal beliefs, as do all of you. Personally, I believe our spirit lives on after we're gone. You can help make your place here on earth heaven or hell, depending on your current actions. The idea of heaven and hell are often closely associated with the religious idea of salvation. In Christianity means believing in Jesus Christ, God, and the Holy Spirit, often called the Trinity. And behind even our earliest choices often lie a host of ramifications. But even if you've lived a horrible life, are currently incarcerated, have lived the vida loca, the crazy life, are addicted to drugs or alcohol, and feel like you're living in hell right now, I believe you can improve and help maintain yourself if you take care of your mind, body, and spirit. I believe you can ask forgiveness from God, or even just get counseling and forgive yourself for past transgressions and move forward towards a more positive lifestyle. All humans, including me, are sinners and have to decide whether we are going to dwell on the bad things that others have done to us and the trespasses against us, or we can learn to forgive, maybe never forget, but move on with our lives, not let other forces control us, and thereby become more positive beings with the days we have left on this earth. And with that parting thought, this is Gabe Morales signing off for Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians. If I go forward, follow me. If I hesitate, push me. If they, I may kill me, avenge me. If I am a traitor, kill me.
Gangsters, cops, and politicians, get ready to rock. On a mission, each one of us shares our own vision.